Elon Musk becomes the United States' first trillionaire, and they wonder why people like Zohran Mamdani keep winning. Alligator Alcatraz finally closes, but not for the reasons that you think. The Iran war gets ended for the 39th time, and Donald Trump's UFC America 250 party goes off the rails. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Polypolitics Show. Welcome to the Polypolitics Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Turner, where opinions are challenged and facts matter. A place for honest conversations and unfiltered perspectives. Elon Musk is now the world's first trillionaire, and we wonder why we see rises of people like Zohran Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, AOC. $1 trillion is more than most people can comprehend. $1 billion is more than most people can comprehend. $1 million is more money than most people are ever going to see in their lifetimes. We're talking about an amount of money that most people couldn't spend in multiple lifetimes, even if they tried. Yet at the same time, inflation is high. People can't afford food. Housing is super high. We just talked about on last week's episode how the median age to buy a house is 38 years old now, which has just increased decade over decade. There's been cuts to Medicaid. There's been cuts to SNAP benefits, right? Inflation is through the roof. We're taking away services from ordinary people, sometimes the poorest people in the United States, sometimes the most vulnerable people in the United States. And yet we can create trillionaires. Let's be very clear. Elon Musk is America's biggest welfare queen. A lot of the money that he's made has come off of government contracts, has come through government subsidies. At the same time, those same taxpayers who are paying him all of this money can't afford beef, can't afford housing, can't afford to pay their bills. But yet those taxpayers are the ones that created the trillionaire. And someone said, well, it's not actual cash. I know it's not actual paper cash. I know how assets work. Okay. I understand that they don't actually hold a lot of cash, and that's how they avoid paying taxes. Again, a whole other problem, right? That's how they maintain their wealth, is not having to pay taxes like normal people by hiding it in assets and then taking loans on those assets. But isn't that really the problem, right? That this isn't like an anomaly in the system. This isn't, this is how the system was built. The capitalistic system in which we were built in was built specifically for people, for the oligarchs, for the people that make all of this money, to continue to hold on to their money, to be able to make more money. Okay. Yeah, he's been successful. He's invested in the right spots. Okay. But he's not making, a million times more. He's not doing 1 million times more work than his lowest paid worker. He's not doing 1 million times more work than our teachers, right? What has he done to deserve all this money? Nothing. He came for money and invested in some spots. And I'm not trying to say, all rich people shouldn't exist. I think that's crazy. Okay. It's not that all rich people shouldn't exist, but I think that we should have limits on it, and we should have the ability to regulate them, right? So that this type of income equality doesn't continue to happen. This isn't a matter of the system being broken. The system was intended to work like this, right? It continues to make wealth concentrate upwards, okay, until one person controls more than anybody else, right? More than certain groups of people have more influence. And that's the real problem, is that this money isn't just money, right? This money is influence. Elon Musk came straight out and said it. He said in the last election that the only reason that Donald Trump won was because of him. And trust me, it wasn't because of his wonderful personality or how gorgeous he is or any of that stuff, right? It's because he used that money to influence elections. I think it was in Michigan. I can't remember which state, but at one point he literally went out and said, hey, if you go vote, we're just going to pay you money. We'll do like a lottery system to pay you money. It helps to shape elections. It helps to shape media, right? Elon Musk owns X. He's able to control that algorithm and change it in the directions he wants to try to influence people. So our system is built to have money transfer up, and then those people get to become more influential than the rest of Americans. They have more power, they have more access, they have more influence, and therefore they can change outcomes. So this isn't about just a bank account. This is about the power that $1 trillion can buy. When the Constitution says all men are created equal, doesn't sound like it, right? It doesn't sound like they're all created equal. It sounds like the system was specifically built in order to give more people an upper hand, or certain people an upper hand over everybody else. This is literally class warfare. It's the upper classes pushing down the lower classes and exerting their will on the American people. So congratulations, America. You built the world's first trillionaire. Now explain to me why we can't solve the problems that are affecting everyday Americans. So apparently Iran has been consulting mental health professionals when it comes to understanding Donald Trump in these negotiations. And honestly, maybe the least surprising headline I've seen in a long time. It seems like the Iranians are seeing exactly what millions of Americans are seeing. An erratic president who struggles to stay on message, who constantly changes his positions, who declares victory 39 times in this war, and can't even seem to speak correct English most of the time, slurring his words, okay? And before anyone says that's unfair, can we not remember that Donald Trump spent all those years attacking Joe Biden's mental fitness? Oh, sleepy Joe Biden, he's not capable of running the country. He can't even speak a sentence. He can't even stay a speech. He can't stay awake. And now Donald Trump is doing the exact same thing. Sounds like a lot of projection to me. And it sounds like American adversaries are seeing the exact same thing.
Iranian sources told me a couple of weeks ago that the Iranian side added senior psychologists to their negotiating team to review the communications that they were going to be sending to the mediators to give to Trump. And they did that because the Iranians believe that Trump is legitimately mentally ill and is operating in an impaired mental state. And they didn't say this as a joke. They didn't say this with any lightness. They said, we recognize that we are dealing with a mentally incapacitated individual, and we've had senior psychologists work up a psychological profile of what they think is going on with Trump's brain.
They are seeing a situation in which Donald Trump cannot stay on message. He can't understand plain English. He's now declared victory in this war 39 times. 39 times, right? And on the day of this podcast airing, they're supposed to be signing a memorandum of understanding. Okay, so let's put that in plain English. This is not a peace treaty. Okay, this is not a final resolution. This is nothing. It's just literally a memorandum stating we will talk about how to end this later. Okay, it's just a memorandum saying let's talk about everything else later. And what do we get out of this? Oh, well, we get the Strait of Hormuz opened. Wait, it was open before we started doing all of this war, right? Oh, we're going to end the blockade. We were doing that prior to the war started also. Oh, we're going to talk to them about denuclearizing. We were doing that before the war started before too. This isn't some major diplomatic breakthrough, okay? This isn't some declaration of victory, all right? This isn't, oh, it's just around. This is the same thing that Donald Trump has done so many times. Remember, oh, I have concepts of a plan for ending the ACA. Right? We're 2 weeks away. We're always 2 weeks away. We're always right around the corner, right? This is just them kicking the can down the road because they can't come to an actual resolution. We're being told that this is some major success, but it's just, we're still negotiating. We're still talking. We're trying to figure this out. I hope we do figure something out, all right? But we heard Pete Hegseth go on television and say it. He said, oh, someone was like, what's the difference between this and what's going on in the JCPOA? Oh, well, the difference is that we bombed them into it. Thanks, Pete. Really appreciate that. Thank you for admitting what we already knew. It's that the only difference between this is the JCPOA is that Barack Obama didn't need to bomb anyone to get it, right? That's the only difference, is that we spent $1 billion a day, right? The lives of American troops, hundreds more injured, to get to exactly what Barack Obama got to without any of this. We haven't even gotten to that point. We're going to start talking about getting to the spot where Barack Obama got without any type of war.
That's the big difference between this and JCPOA and the way Obama did it. Obama, they begged Iran for a deal, and we bombed Iran and then put in a blockade and then ran ships through and then have restarted when necessary to ensure that they come to the table for a great deal. So our military posture will be whatever it needs to be to ensure they're compelled over this 60 days through the memorandum of understanding that they live up to what they said they would do. The document says Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, won't seek one, won't buy one, won't have one.
JCPOA said that too.
In 60 days, there'll be negotiations to make that final. But they didn't have the threat of military force the way that we do, that Iran respects in a very way that their regime is more devastating more devastated than it's ever been in its 47 years. And that's why they're at the table. So the huge difference is we did this from a position of strength. President Trump led with military might. That military might will stay as long as necessary.
The Iran's nuclear program completely remains unresolved. We don't know where we're at. We don't know if they're going to denuclearize. It sounded like they were on the track to do that before this war even started. So where we're sitting at now is a memorandum of understanding, being signed, and the Iranians looking at Donald Trump and going, "We don't think that you have the ability to actually negotiate this as a logical human being. So we're going to bring people in to help you do it." I, for one, am very, very tired of us spending these tax dollars. Remember, government waste. All these tax dollars to get nothing out of it. And what does Donald Trump talk about? His ballroom. All right. He talks about his reflecting pool. Okay. I'm not celebrating this. I'm not celebrating this memorandum of understanding. It's nothing. Okay. It just shows us exactly how incompetent this administration is when it comes to actually executing this war or ending this war. Right. This is not a matter of whether the Ayatollah is bad or whether the Iran is bad. Yes, they are. It was always, does this administration have the ability to actually execute this with any kind of type of competency? And I think that we've seen that they don't, okay? Because after all the bombings, after all the money, after all the risks, after all the lives, after all the promises, we're exactly where we were when this whole thing started. Alligator Alcatraz, the flagship of Donald Trump's immigration policy, is now moving detainees out after less than a year. And they're claiming it's because of hurricanes. Did you not know that Florida got hurricanes prior to this, right? Are you just now figuring this out? Florida spent $250 million building this facility and about $1 million per day to keep operating it. Florida did, okay? Not the federal government. Florida spent that money. I live in Florida, okay? And now you're telling me that you didn't know hurricanes existed prior? First of all, we're not even sure how many people were in this facility, all right? But it's like nobody seems surprised. It's, this was always supposed to be temporary. It was always supposed to be temporary. If it was always supposed to be this temporary, then why did we spend all of this money doing it? All right. And now you're making this claim it's because of hurricanes. Hurricanes are always in Florida. That's what happens, right? But I thought that this government waste thing mattered. I thought every taxpayer dollar mattered. I thought DOGE was supposed to eliminate this waste and this fraud. I thought the Republicans were supposed to be the ones that are fiscally responsible. I live in Florida. Okay. Currently, right now, they're trying to, drastically reduce property taxes in the state. Homeowners insurance is through the roof. Most major companies won't even insure you if you live in Florida. Schools, far from top notch, right? Roads, infrastructure, way falling behind. All right. Think about all of the amazing things that could have been done with this money in Florida. But instead, it went to housing an unknown amount of detainees, hostages is really what they were, without food, without correct amount of food, without worms in it, right? For undetermined amount of time, without due process, without ever being able to see a judge. And why was it? Why do you think it was built where it was built? Why do they think they call it Alligator Alcatraz? Why do you think they stuck it in the middle of the Everglades? Why do you think there was politicians bragging about, we're going to put a moat around it and we're going to put alligators in it? Because this was never about the detainees, okay? This was branding. This was headlines, okay? That's all it was. It was never about immigration policy, okay? It was about creating a symbol. And I think that symbol very much represents the Trump administration. It was a waste of money, okay? It was a political headline without really any substance to it, right? It was wasteful. It was cruel. It was a giant spectacle, all right, for people to go down. It was named this crazy thing. It's just like the Trump administration. That's everything that they do. Okay, it is all about how the media can portray it and spin it, or how they can turn it to give themselves this big headline without actually accomplishing anything. And who was the ones that suffered? Well, the human beings inside of it suffered. These are still human beings. Okay, these are still human beings. I don't care how much they try to demonize them. Migrants are still human beings. All right, Florida taxpayers suffered. All right, and are still going to suffer for a long time as they try to pay this back. Okay. They're just trying to score points. Okay. Now, me personally, I support a certain type of immigration enforcement, all right? Not in the way that ICE sits currently right now, definitely not with these detention centers, but a certain type of immigration enforcement I think is important. And I think that we should spend a certain amount of tax dollars paying for things like that. But what we don't need to do is spend things like these facilities. People deserve their due process. People deserve to be treated like human beings. And more importantly, if you're going to spend our tax dollars, you need to show results. I haven't seen the results. We don't even know how many people were sent to this place. And to close it down after less than a year shows me it wasn't very impactful. Taxpayers deserve better than just slogans. They deserve better than headlines. They deserve better than political theater. They deserve proof that their money is actually solving problems. And the Trump administration in this case, and in most cases with this administration, has shown that they are just about the headlines, just about the slogans, just about the theater, and nothing about actual substance.
And lastly, Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America?
Well, I guess America still can't handle a successful black woman, and I guess there's not really much of a surprise there. At Donald Trump's America 250 USC event, some fighter grabbed a microphone and decided that he wanted to tell the American people about a conspiracy theory about Michelle Obama really being a man. And honestly, that's not even really the surprising part. Michelle Obama has been out of the White House for over almost a decade now. Right? She wasn't even the president. She wasn't the one who held elected office. She was the first lady. Yet people still need to feel the need to attack her. Not her policies, not her record, not the things that she's tried to fight for. These attacks on her as being a man, right? Craziness. And for generations, really, as long as America has existed, right? Generations of black men have been, generations of black women have been portrayed as less feminine, more masculine, more aggressive, less womanly. It actually comes from slavery, right? Which was their justification for what they did to black women in slavery. And that's why it always goes back to Michelle Obama. You never hear this stuff about Laura Bush or Jill Biden or Melania Trump, but somehow the first black first lady gets all of these things in America's history. Again and again and again and again. These are the same people who continually tell me that the left doesn't know what a woman is. Seems pretty obvious that Michelle Obama's a woman to me, but for some reason they can't figure it out, okay? They're willing to deny her womanhood entirely, and this isn't an accident, okay? It's a much older version of America. It's a tradition with black women. We saw it when Kamala Harris was running for president. We've seen it with countless black women in public life, okay? And we're seeing it again. What makes it worse is the silence, okay? When LGBTQ events were happening on the White House lawn, conservatives couldn't stop talking about it. But when a fighter gets on stage and spreads racist, misogynistic rhetoric about Michelle Obama, silence, disappears, no outrage, okay? Culture wars, nowhere to be found, okay? Because this isn't a bug in the system. This is the system. This is the feature of the systems. Donald Trump didn't invent racist stereotypes. He uses them, okay? He created a political environment where people feel comfortable to get on a microphone on the White House lawn, okay, and say these things. This is what they meant when they said, make America great again, okay? This is the rhetoric that they wanted, okay? This culture that is being used by this leadership in the country, it matters, okay? Of course, this conspiracy isn't a story, okay? The fact that people still want to believe it is, okay? She's been out of the White House for a decade, but yet this still continues. I'm not even going to say this fighter's name because he's not important. He doesn't matter, okay? He's just another white supremacist, okay, in America who now feels emboldened by this Trump administration to say these types of things. He is not the issue. The culture is the issue. Michelle Obama is not the problem. The political culture in America that can't handle a successful black woman, an educated black woman, a beautiful black woman, okay, a strong black woman in this country, that is the problem. And that is what this administration continues to perpetuate month after month, day after day, hour after hour after hour. And it's going to continue, and we have to find a way to stop it. Y'all, thank y'all so much for tuning into this podcast. I really appreciate y'all being here. If you could do me a favor, leave a comment, leave a rating, leave a like on this podcast. It does help me to expand, and I am doing my best to try to respond to all the comments that I possibly can. We have an interview coming up with Daquan Neal. He's running for a House seat in Ohio. Excellent interview, and we'll be back with another episode next Friday at 7 a.m. So make sure you turn on notifications and hit that follow button also, and we will see y'all next week on Friday at 7 a.m. Central. Many Democrats right now have been talking about how we need younger candidates, how we need candidates of color, candidates that more represent the actual way the United States looks, as opposed to the gerontocracy that is sometimes being perpetuated within our federal government in both parties. So I wanted to take the time to spotlight one of those people, someone who is younger, someone who is a person of color, someone who is running for a state house district in Ohio, District 39. And I wanted to introduce him to y'all so we could talk about all the awesome things that he's doing in his state and how we need to push forward with younger candidates that are more like him. So everybody, welcome Daquan Neal. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty good. It's been an interesting last week and a half, but I'm having a great time.
So I want to apologize already. I asked you what your name was before. It is Daquan. I said Daquan, so I apologize for that. But for y'all that don't know and aren't super up to date with Ohio politics, Daquan just won his Democratic primary just last week. So I'm sure you are absolutely flying right now after accomplishing that.
Yeah. I mean, flying in every sense of the word. It was an otherworldly feeling to go and do what we did under the means in which we did it. Not having the support of the establishment, and actually with the establishment being an adversary throughout my entire primary was something that was really interesting and unexpected. But it was also just proof and vindication and validation in the fact that you can have more money than me, you can have better connections than me, you can have that establishment presence and that quote unquote name recognition, but the work will always shine through. And the community came out and embraced me and uplifted me, and they made their voices loud and clear.
I know we had talked about this a little bit prior, but so the DNC actually backed your opponent in this race. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's the DNC because this is a statewide race, so the DNC wasn't necessarily, involved in really any capacity. It was more or less like the Ohio Democratic Caucus, the Ohio Democratic Party, so, more or less the state level, but the establishment Ohio Democratic Party, as far as leadership was concerned, was really, not only were they backing my opponent, he was selected by the establishment. They knew I was running, and they went and found him and was like, hey, that's the guy we want to run in your district. That's the guy we picked. This comes into great, conflict with me because I'm under the impression that as Democratic Party, as Democrats, we should want our communities, our neighborhoods to be able to have a say on who they would like
Absolutely
to represent them. That's pretty much like how this works. At least that's the way I understand it. So there was an entire, this last 6 months was a whirlwind of them having different efforts. And I've covered some of these things on my page. If you guys are interested, I've covered exactly many of the different things that they tried to do to not only bully me and pressure me out of the race, but also like the efforts that were made to actually strategically torpedo my campaign.
Why do you think that was, if you don't mind me asking?
It's multifactorial. I think one, I'm a former staffer with the Ohio House of Representatives and the Ohio Senate. And my time spent there was eye-opening, to say the least, because as a staffer, I wanted and was the connective tissue between my community and the representative. That's why I wanted to do this work. That's why I wanted to be a representative, because I'm like, I want to continue to be that connective tissue. But within the Ohio Democratic Party, within the caucus, you are very stifled as a staffer. You cannot do or say certain things. You can't go to certain places. You can't be seen in these certain places because they are always afraid of how it will make their image look. And that always rubbed me the wrong way. So my time as a staffer, I used to get in trouble a lot because I didn't necessarily follow their marching orders. So I used to criticize them. I got in trouble for one time for criticizing their messaging on gerrymandering. We as the Democrats have this negative association with us that we are elitist, that we talk down to people. And you guys are not helping that by not explaining the simplest, most important issues to people. You're saying, hey, gerrymandering is bad, when the public is saying, hey, what's gerrymandering? Like that's where we are. not understanding or accepting that reality is the reason why we don't have an independent redistricting committee in Ohio.
Yeah.
That that initiative failed because people didn't come out to vote on it. But they did come out to vote when it came to reproductive health care. They came out to vote when it came for protections for marijuana use because they understood what was on the ballot. And we were able to make that clear. So I got criticized for that. I got criticized for bringing. I'm an HBCU grad, so I wanted to bring some students from another HBCU down to the state house because I'm here at an HBCU where some of these students are saying we didn't know we were even allowed to go into the state house. We thought we had to have proper clearance, but I'm like, you guys paid for this building.
Yeah.
You guys
Right.
paid for this building. So
Yeah.
you're allowed to come in here. Matter of fact, let me bring you down here and let you talk with some of your leaders. And so as HBCU students, I wanted them to meet with some of their black leaders so they know that they could do that. They know that they could be that. I almost lost my job over that. Almost got fired for trying to bring students down to meet with their leaders. And so I think that for me, I've been considered maybe a thorn in the side of leadership for a long time simply because I am unwilling to shut up when they tell me to. And so when it came to that, as well as my unwillingness to go with their narrative, because I am an unapologetic progressive, and that's what I've ran this campaign on. And I am uncompromising in that perspective, regardless of who party is in charge or what party is saying, don't go this way. I am a progressive through and through. And that's why I tell people all the time, I'm like, you can call me a Democrat, but call me a progressive first, because
Sure.
that's what I am more so than anything. And so even if the Democratic Party was the one who had the super majority, I would still be criticizing them heavily and saying we need to continue to push forward, make sure that we're cementing policies in place that help people and protect people, expand social safety nets. Like, I would still call for that. And so I think that a litany of those things went to why they were like, you're not our kind of guy because you don't go along to get along with us.
So let me kind of push you on that real quick because I actually do have a little question on that. So there's two different kinds of thought processes towards these type of things, right? There's one process that says that Democrats need to be more like the Republicans in the fact that Republicans, there is no room for dissent.
Right.
They are all pushing towards doesn't matter how bad, doesn't matter if it's good, doesn't matter if it's horrible, doesn't matter what it is. There is no dissent. They all push in one direction. And because of that, they are able to get some things done, towards their agenda that maybe the Democrats aren't able to do. Where the Democrats have been criticized multiple times for having lots of different opinions on these different subjects, not always running the same way, maybe sometimes being a little bit too far with interest groups instead of, being one cohesive unit that's moving forward. So how do you balance that with somebody who, maybe people that were possibly funding against you saying, hey, it's not Daquan, it's just that we need to push more towards this center thing, even if that isn't exactly what you may have agreed with?
I think for me, I would feel less strongly about the way that I do if I knew that the community, that the public, that the popular opinion didn't align with mine. I think that the policies that I advocate for, things like a standardized livable wage and universal free school lunch, these are just things that I feel like are overwhelmingly popular amongst the public. Like, these are things that when I go door to door and I'm canvassing and I'm talking with people, I've had so many people who are like, wait, we don't already have that? And I'm like, no. Like, these are, like, we don't have a free school lunch program. We don't have that policy put in place. So this is something where I've been criticized by Democrats who are like, well, how are you going to get Republicans on board? I'm like, I speak to Republicans all the time. I have a video on my page that actually it's my most popular video, which to me is reassuring because I'm having a conversation with a Republican who believes that my policy, my progressive marginal tax rate plan to tax the richest people in the state who have consistently gotten tax cuts over the last few years from the Republican majority, she believed that I was going to tax her. And she's upper middle class at best. But my tax plan is saying I'm going to tax the millionaires and billionaires in this state, and then it's a reallocation plan of our current use of tax dollars. So I am explaining to her, hey, this is what we're doing wrong. This is what we could do, and it shouldn't and will not cost you a dime. And so having this conversation is like, I can bring Republicans on board because many Republicans have the same shared issues that we do. There's way more that connects us than divides us. That is a winning message. And so for me, I think the main thing that I'm trying to get through to the Democrats is that they are so set in their ways that they are not ready to evolve. they're not ready to progress. They are not ready to move forward. They're saying we are united in our message, but it's a losing message. You consistently lose. You're losing to supervillains. You're losing to literally comic book villains. Like these are, like they are actually cartoonically evil, and you're losing to them.
Yeah.
And then you want to come around and then criticize people like progressives like myself and all across the country who are saying, "Hey, let's switch up the message." And then now we are the ones who get ostracized out of the party because you're saying, "Hey, you're not united with us on our losing message. You guys need to get with the program because this message that I have, as shown by my decisive victory in the primary, is overwhelmingly embraced by my community. It's overwhelmingly loved by my community. And this is the vision that they want to see going forward." So I think that for us, we do have a winning message and we all can unite around this message. It's just that these people who are so entrenched and set in their ways, that's the difficulty that we're currently having right now. And I think that we're going to have to continue to fight to make sure that either they get on board with what their base wants, because that's the reason why Republicans succeed, is they're not just succeeding because they're all united in a message. They're united in a message that their base also agrees with.
Sure.
You know, their base will continue to vote them in. The Democratic base does not agree with them on their quote unquote winning message. So they have to at least be willing to listen to people.
Well, and and we're seeing this. We're seeing this on a federal level. Specifically in places like Maine, right, where you had Graham Plattner, and then you had Chuck Schumer go and try to put in a candidate specifically that was more moderate, that was more center, that was more like his style. Which I don't understand why that would work because nobody really likes Chuck Schumer right now as a whole. But we also saw that in New York, right, with Zoran Mamdani, where people like Chuck Schumer, people like Hakeem Jeffries were very, very slow to endorse Zoran because in favor of literal people like Eric Adams, like you said, supervillains, like literal supervillains, And so we're seeing this across the board. But I do agree with you very, very clearly that I'm not even gonna call it the Democratic base, but the base of the left is a lot more progressive than, and I'm not saying all, but I'm saying a large part of the older demographic of the Democratic Party that is still running it understands that it is. They still think that going towards a more moderate message is the correct answer when it's not only not the correct answer, it's not even really an answer. But I did want to push back on something you mentioned, something about an independent board when it came to gerrymandering in Ohio. Now, we are seeing currently with gerrymandering going on in the United States. I actually just spoke with a candidate out of Louisiana who is literally seeing his district almost just completely get changed on the fly after they move that. Well, while you're seeing Republicans that are changing, are gerrymandering re-gerrymandering their states like Texas, like very, very quickly, they don't have these independent commissions, and some could argue that these independent commissions are the ones that are getting in the way of places like California, who was able to pull it off, Virginia, that is getting in the way of them being able to actually combat that. Why do you think that that's the correct answer for Ohio?
I think that I'm open-minded when it comes to the Independent Redistricting Commission. I think that for me, I'm just looking at the alternative. I'm like, currently we have a runaway gerrymandering process with a Republican supermajority that is like ready and willing to ignore the will of the voters at any and every opportunity. And so I think that, I look at an independent redistricting commission and say, that's gotta be at least a little better, at least relatively better than what we currently have. It may not be the ultimate solution, but even if it's a step in the right direction, we have to try to remove the ability for Republicans to just do whatever they want, especially in this state here, because we see that it's not just our state, it's not unique in what they're doing. I just did a video on what's happening in Louisiana and then in Tennessee. So this is not a new phenomenon. We're used to seeing this. And I have heard of the complications when it comes to those commissions. But I just think that when it comes down to it, if we're able to take steps in the right direction to remove the power that they have to just do whatever they want when it comes to our maps, I think that we should be willing to at least entertain those ideas. And I think that that's a better step in the right direction than what we currently have. Mainly, that's my main point. I will not say that that's like, oh yeah, like I'm not willing to die on that hill, but I do feel strongly that it's better than what we currently have.
Yeah. Ohio has been red lately. right? Like it's especially over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
They have been pushing a lot, more towards the red side. But Obama carried Ohio, in his second term, and so Ohio used to be more of a purple state, and now it seems to be leaning more red. Do you think that it's kind of turning back? Do you think that needle is being pushed back towards that purple side, or is it actually maybe being pushed further right?
I think that if you look at who we have been electing, I think depending on your perspective, it really can vary. My perspective would be a little bit of neither. I think that there is a desire for this state to move further back to the left because after nearly 3 decades of Republican leadership in Ohio, we've seen that we have dropped tens of 15 places when it comes to our healthcare, our education, every standard of living. When it comes to Ohio, we have dropped, leagues below our neighboring states. And so we can look at that and say, okay, yeah, this clearly isn't the right direction. And many people are feeling that, they're witnessing that, they're recognizing that, and they're waking up to that. So I think there is a hunger, there's a desire for people to start moving, at least maybe from leaning right to leaning maybe more center left. I know there's a desire there. What I have witnessed, especially throughout my campaign process, is that there is an overall disillusionment when it comes to politics. So I have not witnessed a desire to go blue or red. I have seen a lot of gray. And this is the non-party voters, the registered voters who are like, I don't care, I'm not coming out to vote. I'm sick of both of you guys. I mean, I've knocked on hundreds of doors where the people who live there are like, thank God you're a progressive running because I wasn't coming out to vote. And like this is so there. I think that that's where I'm at. Is like there is a desire for people to see candidates that make them feel seen, make them feel heard, actually know how to talk to them rather than talking down to them, isn't trying to traffic in hate, isn't trying to just send them a mailer and be like, hey, vote for me. And I think that there is a hunger for people to see a change in what politics looks like for them. They don't want to hear from their politician only, twice every other year when they need a vote or some money. Like that's what people are sick of. So there's an overwhelming amount of people who I believe are sitting in that gray, waiting to be spoken to, waiting to be reached. And I believe that's why I'm going to win this race, is because in my district specifically, there is more gray than there is red and blue combined.
Yeah.
That's how significant that disillusionment is in my district. And I think simply because of that, me knowing how to reach those people, I think that that's why I have the edge. So I think that we have an opportunity here to really reach people. But again, the Democratic Party, I believe, has to get out of their own way and make sure that what are we willing to do? Are we saying that we're willing to give up the country because we're not willing to change our ways, our standard ways that we've had for a long time? We're not willing to move past and let other candidates lead. Like if we're not willing to do that to the point that we're only trying to appeal to our traditional base of voters and maybe some right-leaning people, but just forget about everybody else who has felt unseen and unheard, then we will. I feel like we're just kind of giving up and laying down.
Yeah, I think that a lot more leads back into what we were talking about earlier with the DNC and other Democratic organizations just kind of trying to shape things in a way that they think is right, and it's really tone deaf, and I think that's really the big part of it is it's just tone deaf to not understand that progressives are the future of the left. People are tired of those sorts of things, and I think that a lot of voters, because of that, they're seeing how the Democratic Party has been running for so long and going, I just would rather just not vote than deal with that. But it's very awesome to see young progressives going out there and doing things like talking to people, making them understand, let them understand what gerrymandering is, right? I will say, a large majority, I believe, of your normal voting populace are not what I would call informed completely, right? They pay attention during elections, and that's not me talking down to anyone. That's not me saying that anyone is wrong for that. People are living their lives and not as plugged in. So I think it's important for people that are more plugged in, that understand what's going on, to be able to talk about those things in layman's terms, to be able to break it down in a way that people understand. I will say that from my point of view, is that's what I've been able to pride myself on, and for what I've done is to be able to take those more complicated situations and break it down to make them easier. And it sounds like you have that same type of thing, so which is really awesome. Okay, so tell me the first and second most important things to Ohioans right now that you're running on that you think that you can help to remedy if elected.
Ooh, that's there's like a toss up, right? Because I have like my things that like I have like top three priorities for myself. One of them being like people get all like confused most of the time when I tell them my number one like goal in doing this is representation. And when I believe you understand what I mean by representation, but I always have to like I want to go into detail to
Please
explain
do.
what representation means because it's about visibility. It goes into detail about the fact that you are going to see me more often than when I'm just coming out asking for your vote and asking for your support. And I actually go into this and I never ask for money. I hate asking for money and I get criticized for it all the time. All the time I get criticized for it. Throughout my entire primary, I was convinced and told people were like, oh, you're not going to win because you didn't raise enough money. My opponent outraised me 3-1. I spent I fundraised less than $5,000 and I won in my primary. 0 hours I spent phone banking. I didn't make a single phone call asking anybody for any money. Not a single one. I showed up to people's doors. I talked to them. I met with them. I met them at events. I showed up for them. And because of that, they were willing to contribute. You know, if
Yeah.
you have a message that moves people, they will be on board with you. You don't have to call begging them for, $10, $20 when they're already struggling. That
Yeah.
it makes me feel disgusted with myself, even at the concept of calling people asking them for money. It's something that never sat right with me. So when I say representation, it's like, that's what I mean, is literally just showing up. It's in the name. It's in the name. You're called a representative. You got to represent. So like that's my number one. My number two is affordability. So when I'm advocating for things like the standardized livable wage, I actually want to go in and change the language that we have in our code in Ohio to change it from saying minimum wage to livable wage. Because once you change that language, now you have to readjust your perspective of that word. You do not get away with paying people this wage because it is not livable. Now we get to push forward legislation that says this is the livable wage. And I have that included in my legislation, in my progressive marginal tax rate plan, in my standardized livable wage. I have what is considered a livable wage according to the MIT wage calculator. And this is based off of your area that you live in. This is based off of, what job you're working at. This is how much they should be paying you. That actually goes into what I believe will be rent protections for people. Because I don't believe landlords should be able to charge a certain percentage more than what somebody is making, depending on the area they're living in. If this person is only making this much, you do not get to charge them more than what they are making. That's just something that we should not allow in the state. So I'm calling for increased regulations. Yes, I'm okay with looking at it that way. But I believe this is how we combat the unaffordability that we're facing when it comes to that crisis in the state. So affordability is number two, and then education is number three. I'm an educator at heart. I actually wanted to go be a teacher before I decided to quit my job and do this. I was going to go to Howard to get my PhD in political science, and I was going to be a professor. This work means a lot to me because this means now I get to use this platform of everything I've learned thus far to go and say, I can now educate you guys on my experience, what I'm doing, what this looks like, how this works, how a bill is made. I now can use this platform as a representative to educate people, but I also get to include programs like my civics education course, my critical thinking course, my media literacy course, my basic vehicle maintenance program that I have for driving age teens. Like all of these are programs that actually exist. I have them and I take them from school to school because as this platform has been given to me, I now have this obligation to educate the people within my community, and I hope that this is curriculum that gets added into our schools. And if not, we can navigate that by maybe adding portions of that curriculum into there. For example, I want to add a portion into our civics courses or our government courses to where at the end of it, they can fill out a voter registration form if they're of age and they're graduating high school. I want them to fill out a voter registration form, and this can be something they can do in collaboration with the state. They can do it for a credit, whether it be a college credit or a course credit. They can fill that voter registration form out and then turn it in for their grade. And upon graduation, they are a registered voter. If they choose not to vote, that's okay. But we will
No harm,
have
no foul, huh?
an increase of registered voters,
Yeah.
young registered voters because of that. And that may increase their likelihood to participate in voting if they're registered, if they don't have to jump through hoops and don't know how to navigate that road. So yeah, those are my three super important issues for me. I think that for the public, I think there's a lot of overlap there. The only one I would say that I'm missing off of mine is that when I'm knocking on doors, a lot of people are just saying, hey, can you do something about the craziness that we're seeing? They're like, get those crazy people out of there. Like, we're so done with all of this craziness. Can you do something about that? Just go handle it. And I'm like, I will do my best. At the if I can't do no policy changes, I can go up here and yell at some people for you. At the very least, camera fussing some people out, you'd be like, all right, that makes me feel a little bit better at the very least. So yeah, that's the only one that I think is missing. But yeah, there's a lot of overlap there.
That's awesome. I believe that the seat that you're actually running for has been vacated due to term limits, correct?
Yes.
So he was a Republican. He carried, I think, his last election by around 12 points, if I remember my numbers correctly.
Yes.
What do you think your chances of winning here are? Do you think that you have a chance to flip this district?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that my district is probably one of the most flippable, I want to say, in the state. I think because when I'm looking, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about that gray, that huge swath of gray registered voters who didn't vote, who don't vote in the Republican or Democratic primaries. There's a mixture of leaning left, leaning right, center right. There's a mixture of those people, but they're in that huge group of non-primary voters that comprises more registered voters than Republicans and Democrats combined.
Yeah.
And so this to me is like, this is fertile ground to go and try to reach these people and talk with them and prove and validate that you have a winning message, because you know, as somebody who struggled and lived through their struggles, who can relate to them, who knows how to talk to them, because I am one of them. I am one of us. You know, I don't come from a political dynasty. I don't come from money. I don't talk down to people, you know, like I worked my way through school. I had 2 jobs. I worked at Amazon and Staples warehouse while interning at the State House while I was in college, and I had to donate plasma for rent money. You know, like that's what we were living like. That's how we lived. I know it, so I know how.
I've done that before too, actually, back when I was in college. So I know that. I know that struggle. Back when I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, like a lot of us know that struggle. So who better to speak on these struggles and advocate for these struggles than somebody who is not only has experienced them, but is still experiencing them. You know what I mean? Like I you know, so I think that for a lot of people, when they meet me or when they hear about me, it is overwhelmingly consistent. They're like, hey, I appreciate what you had to say about X.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what their background is. It doesn't matter where their leanings are. They will say, I appreciate what you had to say about this thing because I had this experience. And then we can talk. So I truly, truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that I can flip this seat, because I believe that what we're going to witness in my seat is something you're going to begin to witness and are already witnessing across the country, is that there is a movement happening. There's a movement of progressivism. There's a blue wave coming, but it is not a blue wave in a sense that we are being told it is a new blue wave.
Yeah.
It is not vote blue no matter who. It is vote new blue. You know,
I like that.
You have to know that these people who are placed in positions for us, like my opponent was, that is not a blue that gets people excited. That is not a blue that makes people feel something. I believe that I will win because I am capable of making people feel something. And it's something besides hopelessness. I think that if I can reach them, I think I can move them.
Sounds like some Obama vibes over here, brother. I tell you that much. That feels like some Obama vibes. Well, you know what? Hey, I know that you don't like asking people for money, and I highly respect that. I have no qualms about that. Tell everybody out here where they can find you, where you're on your socials, what your website is, and where they can donate if they so choose to.
I appreciate that. If you're curious to learn a little bit more about me and my policy positions, you can go to DaquanNealForStateRep.org. That is my website. It'll also be found in like my social media links. You can find me on TikTok. That's Daquan Neal Ohio. Instagram, Daquan_Neal. And then I'm also on Facebook. That's just Daquan Neal. So all of my policy positions, I try to express them. I have educational videos about all kinds of different issues on all of my social media platforms. If you ever have any questions about anything, feel free to shoot me a DM. And if you do visit the website, there's 2 links that you can follow. These are my ActBlue page is going to be one of them, and then there's another one of a volunteer page. So there'll be a donate link if you're interested in contributing that way. There's a volunteer link if you want to, contribute some efforts, whether that be canvassing, sharing things via social media, putting out information, passing out flyers, anything like that. We love having people who are willing to come out and use their passion and find out wherever your niche is. That's where we want you to be at, So yeah, you can find me on any platform like that. And like I said, if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Beautiful. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate having you. All right, man?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Take care. Appreciate you guys. Keep thinking, y'all.
Thank you for listening to the Poly Politics Podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.